stood with my hand hovering over Gideon's watches. You see, I had to ask myself, could this be of Yah? I had asked the preacher once when I was a young girl, and he had first brought lion to me to lay hands on after he had been torn up pretty good. How do I test the spirit on my own thoughts? He said there are two simple ways. First, if my thoughts are telling me something that is not in the scripture or went against what was in the scripture, it probably was not the spirit of Yah guiding me. And he said, Yah would never tell us to sin. Sin, of course, being the breaking of his laws. As I stared down at those watches, I battled fiercely within myself. Yah cannot be behind this. That was a fact. And if Yah wasn't behind it, then there was a good chance that this could be a huge disaster. But surely it was not in Yah's will for me to be here with this big bully. Surely the Father didn't want me to suffer like this. Plus, I wanted to go home. I miss my dad and my friends. I wanted to go home so bad. So I went on and grabbed 3 of the watches, and I stuffed them in the pocket of my skirt. Forgive me, Abba. Quickly, I made my way downstairs to the kitchen. Dawid and I had 20 minutes to get to the west gate. When I entered the kitchen, Ima looked up from a magazine she was sitting at the counter reading. I came to her and hugged her close. I think I was going to miss her the most. Now, remember, Ima, drink you a cup of tea every night before bed until your supply runs out, okay? She frowned at me. Okay, but if I forget, I'm sure you'll remind me. I smiled, not wanting to lie to her. I was already sinning. Right? She asked. Tears almost came to my eyes, but I kept that smile on my face. Safiya, what are you doing? What are you up to? Please don't do anything stupid. Gideon has eyes and ears everywhere. She was getting herself worked up. Ima, I put my arm around her shoulders. Be calm. Don't worry. Everything is going to be all right. She looked at me with doubt in her eyes. Safiya, please. Ima. She held up her hands. Okay. I trust you. She stood picking up her magazine. He has eyes everywhere on this island, she warned, before she turned to make her way out of the kitchen. If I wasn't so desperate, I like to believe I would have heeded her warning. But at this moment, my freedom was so close, I really couldn't hear anything over that fact. I walked down the stairs to the servants' entrance. Dawid, I said, opening his door. However, I came up short at the sight of Rosa jumping up from where she sat leaning over him on the bed. She looked down at the floor, avoiding my eyes. I came all the way in, shutting the door. Dawid lay on the bed, shirtless, still wearing those white karate pants and blue belt. One of his muscled arms was behind his head, whereas Rosa wore a very guilty look. Dawid wore the smirk of a fox. What is going on here? I asked, putting my hand on my hip. Nothing, miss. I was just checking on him. She hurried past me, out the door, shutting it quietly behind her. I watched her go, turning shocked eyes back to my nephew. Dawid! Doda, relax. It's not what it looked like. Really? 'Cause it looked like you was in here making out with a woman double your age. He chuckled, coming to sit up in the bed. It's not a good idea. What? Making out with a woman twice your age? I asked. He shook his head. That little silly smirk still on his face. Nah. Trust in Elena. Dag, that boy in his hearing. I sat down at the end of the bed. Why not, Dawid? She wants me gone as much as I want to be gone. Don't you want to go home? You know your mother is probably worried to death, lying probably at the gym throwing furniture around and stuff. He chuckled, rubbing his hands through his brown locks. Yeah, they probably are. But if we botch this escape attempt, who knows when we get another chance? And Gideon, man, he shook his head. He's deadly, Dodai. Who knows what he'll do? Plus, you can't leave without telling him, right? I frowned at him. Wrong, I said. He chuckled. He is your husband, right? What? Wrong? Why would you say something like that? Scripturally, I'm talking about. I shook my head. He ain't my husband, no way, no how. He rubbed his hands through his locks again. I know you might see it that way, but how does y'all see it? I folded my arms across my chest. Just spit it out. What are you trying to say? All I'm saying is, you lay with him, and I didn't hear you crying out. My mouth dropped. Dawid, nothing happened. It's more than I can say for you and what I walked into here. He chuckled. Ditto, Auntie. He stood and went into the bathroom. I sat on his bed, stewing. See, what made this whole thing so bad is he was right. I had lain with Gideon. I allowed him to do things to me that in Yah's eyes would definitely classify him as my husband. But the way I saw it is, what Gideon didn't know wouldn't hurt him. Now wait. Before you judge me, let me run a few things by you. First, he was not the marrying kind. We all saw how he responded with old Mistress Elena when she brought up the topic. So why would I even play myself and do the same? And I realized that since technically he was my husband, even if he didn't know about it, that meant I was officially off the market. And I was completely fine with that. I would go home, take care of my dad, immerse myself in the study of Yah's plants. As far as children, I wanted them, but I'll just have to settle with helping Stormy and Nuria with theirs. There's no rule against being the lonely old aunt. Dawid came out of the bathroom dressed in a fresh pair of jeans and a white tee. On his feet was a pair of Timberlands. I frowned at him. Where'd you get all that from? He chuckled. Mostly Rosa. The boots and the PlayStation I guess from my good buddy Monroe. I looked in the corner of his room, and sure enough, there was a TV and a PlayStation. I looked back at him. Well, you sure have done well for yourself over the last few days. He laughed, looking at me, his eyes taking in my new clothes and golden shackles. Then they landed on my golden sandals I wore on my feet. Ditto, Auntie. Ditto. You know what? This kid was too smart for his own good. Are you ready? I asked, standing. He nodded and frowned at the same time. I got a bad feeling about this. I looked at him for a minute. If the truth were to be told, I too had a bad feeling. But what if we were wrong? I had to try. I know, baby, but I want to go home, and I want you to be home, okay? He nodded. Okay, daughter. I laughed, looking up from my paper, as little Jesus dipped down to the mat, breaking, as if he was one of the B-boys from back in New York.
Gideon, watch me!
Chucky called as he joined Jesus on the mat.
Hey, Gideon. Gideon.
A little hand pulled at my sleeve.
Can I hold your gun?
No, mijo. Chucky's little brother, Nimble, was only 4, but the boy was obsessed with guns. Come on, mijo. We'll do your drills, Lee said, putting his hand on the little fella's head. giving him a little shove over to where Monroe was taking a couple of the younger fellas through their drills. Again, I called to the older teens who I had doing burpees in sets of 20. They groaned. I looked up at them from where I sat reading the paper at the desk. Instantly, they hit the ground in push-ups. I looked back down at my paper. My phone beeped from the table. I looked down at it. Elena. I pushed ignore. I didn't feel like hearing hush today. Again, I said, without looking up from the paper. "Oh man, Gideon," one of the youth said. The others whined. I looked up. They all hit the ground. I shook my head. "I don't know about you boys. How you gonna get the women when you cry worse than me madre?" "Gideon," Butch called from across the gym, where he was doing drills with another group of kids. I looked up. He held up his phone. "Elena." I slashed my hand in front of my neck before I went back to reading. Damn, she was worrisome. I think it was time I get her place far, far away from me. Hey man, you might want to take this." I looked up frowning at Butch. I could tell by the look in his eye, I was finna be pissed. "What?" I said into the receiver. "You would think you could be nicer to me. I'm trying to have your back." "Elena!" "What?" Damn, I didn't want to hear the damn speech. "I just thought you would like to know that your new little slave is gone. Her and the boy. And before she left, she robbed you." The phone went dead. I sat back, red covering my vision. I stood, picking up my phone. "Hey, we need to roll," I told the fellas. I pushed the number 1 button on my phone. "Yep," Felix said, answering. "Hey bro, I need you to send me Sophia's tracking to my phone." I hung up. "Hey little fellas, man, we're gonna have to cut it short. But I'll make it up to y'all." Their faces dropped. I hated to cut their time short. I know they looked forward to it. "Hey look, maybe I'll let y'all come by the armory next week." Their faces lifted. I turned, walking out the gym. I was trying to get away from them before I exploded. I felt like hurting somebody. I needed a release. I stopped and I punched the nearest thing to me, which was the brick wall, welcoming the pain. I cracked my neck. Yeah, that was perfect. I looked at my men. Monroe stood in front of the hole I had just punched into the wall, sticking his arm through it. I looked down at the coordinates Felix had sent me. I smiled. What do you know? She's in my neck of the woods. "All right, boys. Seems that my bird has flew the coop. Let's go hunting." I turned and took off, Wolf and my men behind me. As I grabbed onto that first ledge, launching myself in the air, the thrill that always filled me when I hunt washed over me, and for a moment, it dulled the rage shooting through my veins. Daweed and I tried to push our way through the crowded streets. We had just left the pawn shop, and I'm pretty sure we got robbed. That little crook had only given us $2,000 for those 3 watches, and I know for a fact that put together, they cost more than my daddy's house. "We need to try to find a taxi to take us to the airport," I told him over the crowd. He nodded, stopping to speak with the guy that was selling fruit. As he spoke, I listened, amazed. He spoke Spanish as if he was one of the locals. Even the man looked at him surprised before he started to speak to him in that rapid way that Gideon did when he spoke Spanish. Daweed nodded and thanked him. "There is no airport in town," he told me. "We have to go see a man named Manuel. He has a plane. For $100, he'll fly us to Punta Cana. Once there, we can get a plane back to the States." I nodded. "Okay, where's Manuel?" He pointed up the street, about 4 blocks that way. I smiled. "This is good, right?" He smiled back, hesitant. I don't know yet. When we get there, I think I'll feel better. I nodded, me too. We walked as fast as we could through the crowd, but it was bumper to bumper. This was worse than downtown. The hairs on the back of my neck were standing up. I looked around, not being able to shake the feeling of being watched. Then Daweed came to a complete stop. He turned, standing in front of me. Although he was only 15, he stood much taller than me, so I had to look up at him. I could tell by the look in his eye as he slowly looked through the crowd. Something was wrong. He looked up at the roof of the building across the street, narrowing his gaze. Come on, Doda, they're on the roof. He took my hand and we began to run. I had to pump my legs to keep up with him. Without him pulling me, I probably wouldn't have been able to. As we ran, I turned to look up across the street and what I saw could not possibly have been the acts of humans. Gideon, Monroe, Lee, Butch, and 2 other guys in that wolf were leaping from roof to roof, but they just wasn't leaping. They was like flipping and doing impossible things. What are they doing? I asked Daweed, gasping for breath, as we stopped to impatiently wait for the cars that were crossing the intersection to stop or at least slow down so that we can get through. I think it's a form of free running, although I've never seen it done like that. He pulled me into traffic. The cars had slowed down enough that we could force one of them to stop as we crossed. I looked up again and my eyes connected with Gideon's. A shiver raced through me. He had an evil smirk on his face, and although that smirk was there was pure, uncut rage shooting from his eyes. I cried out. He wasn't human. I have never seen anybody move like that. None of them were. Doda, pay attention, Daweed yelled. As we continued to run through the crowd, suddenly he stopped, looking at a black truck that sat on the corner. Leaning against it was one of Gideon's men. Across the street, another black truck pulled up. Come on, let's go this way. He led me through what looked like an alley or something like that. There were clotheslines on the tall buildings from building to building, and they went all the way up to the top. I heard a whoop. I looked up and I screamed when I saw Gideon leaping from one building to another over our head, that big black wolf next to him. A streak of white flashed as Monroe did a forward flip across. Oh my goodness, he was going to kill himself. We kept running, but the passageways got thinner and thinner until finally there was nowhere else to go. We turned around to try and work our way back through this maze that was the alleyway, but we was forced to stop and watch, mouths open, as Gideon and his men leaped like spiders, descending from the top of the building from one window to the other to land in front of us, blocking off our escape. They weren't human. It wasn't possible. I mean, I seen Spider-Man do it, but no, this wasn't possible. I have got to learn how to do that, Daweed said, sounding like a kid that had a new hero. Mouth still open, I turned to look at him. Really? I asked. He shrugged. Me, Princesita, Gideon growled. He still wore the wicked smirk, but the anger that came from him was explosive. It felt like someone had just taken a pin out of a grenade, and the only thing that was keeping it from blowing was one finger. Leaving so soon, and without saying goodbye. He shook his head, coming to stand in front of me. Daweed grabbed my hand to pull me in back of him. Gideon just looked at him and shook his head. Daweed dropped my arm. What? I turned surprised eyes to look at him, but he was watching Gideon. Get in the truck, Daweed, Gideon growled. Right then, 2 black trucks pulled up at the mouth of the alleyway. Come on, bro. It ain't worth it. Trust me, Monroe said, putting his hand on Daweed's shoulder. I watched, amazed, as he just walked away. Really, Daweed? I yelled after him. I mean, I was expecting him to do something spectacular, something Daweed-like. Anything to try and get us out of the situation. He put his hand on his side. I would, Doda, but I just got shot, you know? Oh, so now he wanted to act ill. Okay, I was on my own. I folded my arms across my chest, looking up at Gideon, who had been staring down at me the whole time. Imagine my surprise when I get a call that my beautiful red bird has flown the coop. I narrowed my eyes. I don't know why you're surprised. Surely, you know every caged bird longs for freedom, even if the cage is golden. That wicked grin came back on his face. He turned to look at his man. Freedom, she says. Lee and the others looked at him wearily. Even they knew this was a very dangerous situation for everybody, because I'm telling y'all, this dude was not stable. Tell me, who all heard her make an agreement? Your life, he pointed at me. For his, he pointed back at Dawid. Everything within me was begging me to just use some good sense and stay quiet. But you see, I don't know. I felt so close. I was so close to seeing my father again. Tears came to my eyes. Just let us go. I held up my hands in front of me. Gideon, please. You don't need us here.
How do you know what I need?
He yelled, so loud my eardrums popped. I put my hands on my eyes, just for a moment trying to escape from the force of his glare. Tears were flowing down my face. Dear Yah, help me. I couldn't do this alone. Gideon, I want to go home. I had to try one more time. Home? Home? He said, walking back towards me. He's not going to hit you. He's not going to hit you. I told myself, but I couldn't help but flinch in the face of his rage. You are home, Princessita. Why can't you see that? Your home is with me. He spoke quietly, standing over me. I lifted my head, shaking it. This is not my home, Gideon. My dad... Uh-oh. Wrong words. His nostrils flared as he stared down at me, breathing like a bull. Your dad, he whispered, before he turned and punched the big blue metal garbage can, sending the thing sailing over the fence to crash into the building next to us, where it caused the brick to crumble from the hole it left. Why can't you get it in your head that your days with your father are over? It's time for you to grow up and focus on your man. Can't you understand that? He yelled, before he seemed to get a hold of himself. No, you know what? No worries. If you can't see it on your own, then I'll just have to help you. His arm came around my waist, and he swooped me off my feet and into his arms. Lee held the back door of one of the trucks open. He stepped in, holding me tightly in his lap. Y'all, my heart was racing out of control. This man was crazy. He whispered in my ear, causing shivers to run down my back and into my center. Until you accept me on your own, until I become a part of you, until without me you feel incomplete. You won't go nowhere unless I take you. You won't eat a drop unless I feed you with my own hands. And when you sleep, it will be my arms you're in. I'm your daddy now, mi princesita. And until you realize that and submit to it, I'll be your everything, because you won't have contact with nobody else.